Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. This video is going to be a bit different to my usual content. In exactly 1 minute I will have a new project. I'm going to tell you it's yellow, it doesn't start, it doesn't even have an engine or a gearbox. It's missing a fair amount of things. I just might win this bid for £102 and it's literally a few miles from my house and my work, so I'll be able to go get it tomorrow after work and bring it home. So this is going to be the first project that I have at the new house and the next project to introduce to the channel. And another clue I'm going to give you, it's a Honda. 3, 2, 1. Yep, I won the bid. Oh, what am I doing? And, oh my god, it's just hit me. It's been in a scrapyard. So, the project bike has a few hidden stories to tell. So before I get into this, obviously when I bought the bike, stupidly I didn't do a background check before I bought it. I did it after I bought it, after I noticed something suspicious. I didn't know anything about the chassis. Didn't really do much research on it, to be honest. I just saw a cheap project bike and I knew it would need work, so I was expecting to go and see it in a state that looked a bit, you know, run down. I was fully expecting it to look exactly how it looked. Nothing really stood out as suspicious at the time. I mean, I bought it in the dark, so I couldn't really inspect it thoroughly. But again, there's nothing that I was really going to fully inspect because I thought I knew what I was buying. So the number plate comes back as a 1981 Honda Custom, a 125, which, as you can see on the screen, it does look very similar to what I've got. Yeah. However, I started noticing some strange things on the bike. It came with no keys, which is fair enough, it's not got an engine, so I thought maybe they had to take the barrels out when they took the engine out. Why they took the engine out, I don't know. No keys, that's fine. No V5, I did think that was suspicious, but the circumstance is, the story that this guy gave me, we'll call the guy that I bought it off Bob, let's call him Bob. He said that his friend runs a demolition company in our local area, and basically what he does is he buys big plots of land with old buildings on them. He'll demolish the old buildings, clean up the whole site, and then sell on the land for a profit. Now, what he's saying is, his friend, whenever his friend buys land, anything on the land, vehicles, objects, you name it, anything on the land at the time, he immediately owns after he buys the land. If he buys the land and there's a motorbike on it, for example, he owns the motorbike. So, the rest of the story goes, he bought some land in the local area to demolish the houses and stuff. He started demolishing the houses, and in the back garden there was a shed, and in the shed that was kind of collapsing and falling apart, he noticed this yellow motorbike. And what he's saying is, the state that he found the bike in is exactly the state that I have it in today. If my bike's registered as a Honda, why is the frame a Kawasaki? What have I bought? What is this bike? Is it a banger?
Hell yeah.
So he dragged it out the shed. Again, none of this has a real timeline on it. He didn't say when, so you can only assume it was after the MOT expired, and then took it home. It sat in his garden for what looks like years, but you don't know if it was damage from the shed or what. but it was like brown and green and stuff and mouldy, so it had been sat outside for some decent amount of time. Yeah, basically his story goes that he got the bike exactly as I see it today. He doesn't really know why it was in the shed stripped. He doesn't know anything about the bike. He couldn't really give me any information on it really, other than what he thought it was. He thought it was a Honda because that's what the plate comes back from. So you search the plate up on DVLA. It says it's a 1981 yellow Honda 125. So the reason I started to get suspicious, I could not pin down, because obviously my first port of call as a project, I want to put an engine in it. Before I start tarting it up, making it look smart and stuff, I wanted to get it running and moving under its own steam. So, right, I need an engine. But obviously, I'm missing a good portion of the front of the frame. So I needed to get the engine mounts before I could get the engine. I sort of wanted to build up from the scratch, you know. I wanted to get the mounts, mock it all up, put the engine in, and then I could start going from there, see what other parts I'm missing. Because I don't want to go buying a seat, for example, because it is missing a seat. I don't want to go buying the seat if I can't even find the engine, because the project basically would have got halted straight away. And I was doing the research to try and find out what engine's going to fit in this, because it's an 81 Honda, but from what I could see, the frame looked very, very different. And granted, this is the first motorbike I've bought, the first motorbike I've ever worked on. I've never ridden a bike or anything, so I know much about cars. Yeah, I know a fair amount about cars. It's a whole different kettle of fish with bikes. So I just thought, oh, maybe it's a bit of a different frame, it's a bit of an oddball frame. But the more research I did, the more it looked like the bike wasn't a Honda. I did a big background check on the vehicle, Motorcycle News, bike check. They charged me like a tenner or something daft, something small, and straight away after I put the plate in, bang, this bike is recorded as stolen. Now, keep in mind, obviously that's just the number plate that's recorded as stolen, technically, because I don't think the bike is a Honda. At this point, I'm like, shit, the bike's stolen, because I didn't know if it was a Honda or what. I didn't know what it actually was, but I just knew that the plate that's in my possession that I bought, bear in mind this is the next day, so I bought the bike one afternoon after work. The next morning I looked at it in the light and saw something suspicious on it. I ran that check, and that was when it said it was stolen. I didn't know what to do at this point. Essentially I thought I was in possession of stolen goods, or handling stolen goods, which is obviously illegal. Google told me call 101, which is the non-emergency police line. So I spoke to our local police. They took all the information. They took, because I can see the VIN number on the frame. The reason why I thought it was suspicious in the first place is because I looked at the VIN number on the frame where the VIN number should be, and it was missing, and I looked in a different spot and there was a VIN number there. And I can show you now. I won't show you the full VIN number, obviously, for what I can only describe as legal reasons. But if you do any search on the vehicle, on the number plate at least, you can see that the VIN number ends in 0646. So I can show you that part of it and not reveal anything. It looks like it's been stamped on DIY. Like someone has got a number puncher and just punch the numbers in. It's not a factory VIN. Well, it's a factory VIN from Honda, but it's not been applied the way a factory VIN would be applied. So you see, most factory VINs, they're on some sort of tag that's riveted onto the car. Now, again, I can't really speak for motorbike because I don't know much about motorbikes. But when I was looking at the frames for the Hondas, they're the same. They're all tags that are riveted onto the frame. And it's done that way, so it's like a one-time thing. It can't be unbolted off. You can drill it off, but it'll be fucking obvious. It looks strange to me, which is why I did the check, and then it came back stolen. So the VIN does match the plate. So the plate and the VIN, they are for a 1981 Honda. So the bike, why is the bike strange then? Because I still didn't think at this point that the bike was right. I spoke to the local police, and they took the details of the plate and the VIN number, and they both come back to a 1981 Honda, which is all nice and good. They did say it was confirmed as stolen on the 1st of December 2009, and they contacted the DVLA and got back to me later on in the day, and they said that it was also later confirmed as being recovered, so that's all good. They couldn't say the exact date that it was recovered, but they did say that it was recovered. So they said the stolen marker that's on the vehicle, that's always going to stay there. Apparently that'll never go. But if there is any issues in the future with it, then they can always look back and see that it was recovered, so that's never really going to be a big issue, I don't think. So basically, from the police's point of view, they said I am fine to use the bike. They said it's got the right VIN number, they said it's got the right number plate, they said go ahead, do what you want with it, you can put it on the road, they just said I was fine to basically do whatever. After doing more and more research on the bike, for the life of me I could not find an engine that would fit it. It was looking like the 125 Hondas had different engine mounts. It was looking like the actual 125 Hondas had different frames. I could not pinpoint what frame it was from a Honda, what engine it was from a Honda. I just couldn't at all. Doing more and more research on the bike, I found a piece of the frame on my bike, unbolted it, and I actually took a photo of it and used Google Lens. Now this is such an incredible tool. I don't know how much longer I would have been looking to try and find the frame of this bike without it. Well, without it, I was looking at CMX 500 frames and it looked sort of similar at the top, but still nothing really like it. So I took this piece of frame off the bike, I ran it through Google Lens, and straight away it came back and said, this piece of frame is off a Kawasaki Eliminator 250cc. And now I'm sat there thinking, Honda, Kawasaki, at this point I know what you people in the audience are probably thinking. Well, Chris, Honda and Kawasaki, they're both Japanese, so obviously at some points they just shared frames. Don't worry about it, it'll be fine. But I still had this feeling in the back of my head that it was something a bit deeper than that. I still had this thought that something's not right with the bike. I did even more research, and you're going to hear me say that a lot in this video because I absolutely did my homework on this bike. I know this frame now. I know 100% what it is, and it's got a hell of a story behind it. Now I still don't know the full story, granted, but it's going to reveal itself one way or another. I was looking at parts on the bike because basically at this point I knew something wasn't right. I wanted to confirm to myself that I wasn't crazy and that I might have stumbled across something that I probably shouldn't have. So basically I was rubbing down parts on the bike, not sanding it down, rubbing it down with my finger because it was all icy outside. It's been left out in the weather, so it's a bit icy and a bit, dirty and stuff. But I was rubbing down parts, looking for part numbers. Basically I wanted to confirm without a shadow of a doubt that it was a Kawasaki. And there was something interesting that I found on the frame that said, made in Japan, KHI. I'm not a bike guy, so again, I didn't know what KHI stood for. I knew K, obviously Kawasaki you would think, but I didn't know HI, so I thought, it might be some other frame marking or something, so I googled made in Japan KHI. And what that means is, made in Japan, Kawasaki Heavy Industries. So it's a legitimate Kawasaki frame. Now, if it was a Honda frame and they maybe shared parts, you would think it wouldn't say that on it. It's really not a Honda. Another reason, what confirmed it to me, for it being a Kawasaki and not a Honda, the engine mounts. They are, well, it's a Kawasaki frame, so they don't fit the Honda engine. And although the number plate comes back to a 125, this physically can't fit a 125. So the Kawasaki Eliminator did do a 125, but again, the frame was different, so it doesn't fit that. This is a 250 frame. Now, I was trying to prove to myself again, how is it a 250 frame? Like, what makes it specifically different? I was going through all of the stuff that was left on the bike, because obviously the engine's missing. Quite a lot of the wiring and ancillaries are actually still on the bike. So, I've got 2 coil packs. So that means it was a 2-cylinder. Now, I believe the 125 was a 1-cylinder, but it's kind of hard to find engines and hard to find the parts to confirm that. So that was still a little bit of a shot in the dark. But what really confirmed it for me was I thought I could see some writing under the rear seat. So I took the rear seat off. Now obviously earlier in the video, after I did the Google Lens shot of the frame, it came back and said it was a Kawasaki Eliminator 250. Now I took this seat off the bike, and underneath the seat, where I thought I could see writing, as if like in a scrapyard they'll write on parts and say what it's off, for example. Now on the seat it says Kawasaki EL250, and EL is Eliminator, that's just like the abbreviation for it. So this Kawasaki was in a scrapyard. What I don't get about this whole thing is why? Why would you ring it up as a Honda and not the original Kawasaki? Unless that was stolen and like too hot to handle, that could be a reason. So if they've done it for profit, okay, where's the profit? Because I only bought it for £105. So they've not really made a killing off that. It's not like the heist of the century, and in my opinion it's not really even worth it. So if you were going to go through all that risk ringing up a dodgy car, you'd want thousands, you'd want tens of thousands, not £100. Which kind of leads me to believe that the guy that sold it to me maybe didn't know that it was a ringer, because he said himself he couldn't really identify the bike, and I don't know if he was into bikes or anything, but it didn't take me, well, it took me a whole of 2 days. Now, we're going to go over the paperwork side of it. So essentially, I got no paperwork with it at all. The guy said he simply didn't have the paperwork, which is fair enough. So I went through the MOT history of the bike, and there's a few anomalies in here. So while I'm reading out these dates and this information, keep in mind that in 2009, the 1st of December, the bike was registered as stolen. So what I want to do, I want to make like a sort of timeline for the bike that I can pinpoint things on and say, factually, well, for the number plate at least, this happened here, this happened here, this happened here. We can try and draw our own timeline, and then basically we'll try and fill in the gaps, but I only want to use facts. I don't want to use ifs and buts and what if and all that. I want to use facts. So obviously all the information that I've got is based from the number plate. Now the Kawasaki doesn't have any Kawasaki VIN number on it. I can't find it being removed, so I can't see it's... Usually what they'd do is they'd grind them off, I'm guessing, or drill out the rivets and then grind that flush. Basically, it doesn't look like anyone's tampered with it, apart from the fact that there's a dodgy VIN on it that's been sort of hand-stamped. I don't know what the plate would have ever been if it was a Kawasaki. I don't have any facts on the Kawasaki itself, which is a shame, but that's just what it is. So the only facts I've got on this timeline are from the Honda plate and the Honda VIN, which is the bike that I've technically bought. So, the first MOT history check that I can find is from 7th of April 2007. Now obviously I think 2007 was when the MOTs actually went computerised, so anything before that is long gone. Never going to see that ever again probably, unless you can find the test centre and ask them if they've got documents from 2006. But probably not. 7th of April 2007, the Honda had 35,158 miles. It had a failure because the drive chain was worn to excess, the rear drive chain was worn to excess, the rear drive chain sprocket was worn to excess, and the front brake cable was knotted. And then it came back with 8 miles added onto it, and a week later, and it passed with no advisories whatsoever. So I'm guessing they replaced all those bits. In 2009, the mileage on the MOT dropped from 35,800 down to 8,500, which makes me believe that that could have been the Kawasaki that went through the MOT in 2009. A few months after July 2009, in December 2009, that was when it was stolen, and we don't know exactly when it was recovered. In 2010, in fact, the bike didn't have an MOT, so it must have expired, and then they either couldn't get it back on the road because it was still stolen, or maybe it came back when it was recovered and it was in a bad position, so they couldn't physically put it through an MOT at that point either. If it got stolen on the 1st of December 2009, and we don't know the recovery date, it could have been recovered on the 2nd of December in an absolute shit-tip shape, and it wasn't usable, which is possibly why it did so little miles. But again, very weird. And the only advisory on that MOT was that the rear tyre was worn close to the legal limit, which is standard if you've stolen the bike, I guess. You're probably braying it about and doing burnouts and shit. The last MOT ever recorded on this motorbike, or on this number plate at least for the Honda, was the 25th of August 2012. At 8,641 miles, it failed because it had a brake light out, and then immediately after that, the same day, no mileage change, it passed. I'm assuming they just swapped the bulb. And that was the last thing it ever saw. And the MOT didn't expire for another year after that, and that was also the time that they stopped paying tax for it. Now, another one of my theories was that they've sold this Kawasaki and they're still using the Honda about on the roads, and it's maybe a duplicate, they've cloned the plate or something, but that's fair enough because it's tax and MOT exempt, being 1981, so all they would need is insurance. But the plate's not showing up as insured. Obviously I haven't insured it, there's nothing to insure. It's a £100 shell outside. It's not worth anything to me really. It does make for interesting content, and it is a very interesting story so far. Here is the background check that I did on the bike that revealed quite a lot. License plate and VIN currently recorded by insurance as theft. Now this is kind of why I also have a theory that it was insurance fraud, because they never reported it to the police. Why would you do that? I've just had my bike nicked. I'd probably tell the police. It gives us the engine number on all sorts of the bike. Now the engine number, obviously I can't check that because the bike doesn't have an engine, but it does come back to a Honda engine, the number that it's got on the check, which is a 125. Well, technically a 124, but yeah, I don't have that in the bike physically, so I can't confirm or deny that. I don't know. Fuel, petrol, yeah, you don't really get diesel bikes. The colour, yellow, but it also says number of colour changes 1. Now, I'd have to do another report on another vehicle to see if it's 1 for every single vehicle, which is like when it came out the factory it had a colour, but I don't know, because obviously if it had no colour changes that would make me feel a bit better, whereas because it says it's yellow and it's had 1 colour change. And actually, just looking at this now, the last colour change was 2010. Exactly a year after it got stolen, the colour was changed to yellow. Interesting. Very interesting. I did not notice that until just now, actually. The colour changed from yellow to yellow. We don't know what it was previously. The current owner acquired it on the 20th of the 8th, 2004, and they still technically own it now. Well, the police did say the insurance company would own it after it was stolen and recovered, because they would have been paid out in some way or another. But also, I don't have the logbook or anything. I can apply for the DVLA with a V62 form, and if I give them the VIN number that I've got and the plate, they can give me the V5 if I pay them £25. And that's a fully legal process, that's fine. I now know that what I've got outside is not a Honda. I kind of want to see. Basically, in my opinion, I've got two main options here. Break the bike apart and sell all of the bits. I'll probably scrap the frame because I don't really want anybody getting a hold of that if it is a dodgy frame with a Honda VIN on it. I'll probably scrap the frame, and I legally own the bike physically, so I can sell all of the parts off it, that's not a problem. Option number 2 is I could fully restore the bike, but then you run into the problem of it's registered as a Honda, but physically it's not a Honda, it's a Kawasaki. So I would have to rebuild the bike, restore it, and then possibly get in contact with the DVLA and see if there's any way of hooking me up with a Kawasaki VIN number and plate. But I don't know if that's ever heard of, or I genuinely don't know. I'm assuming this sort of situation has happened to people before, but Googling it gives you very little information. Now there's nothing else really that I wanted to go through on the reports or on anything that I found on the bike. I just wanted to sort of give the story out to you guys, see what you think. Now, my dad is very much into motorbikes. He's been riding them since he was probably 16, maybe even younger, and he still rides them now. He's 50 odd. I didn't tell him I bought this, and I was kind of hoping for it to be a surprise, but it's a bit of a strange surprise now that I know it was stolen and it's got a dodgy history and there's potentially some big question marks on the bike. I'll show him anyway. I probably won't get it on video or anything, but his reaction could be cool. So we'll see what he weighs in at, because he might know of a way of registering it legally as a Kawasaki and changing it from a Honda legally to a Kawasaki. Because essentially the only thing tying it to a Honda at the moment is the number plate and the VIN number. If I can somehow manage to find the original Kawasaki plate, I guess I could keep it. And I guess I could find the VIN number from the plate. And, well, it's a very big rabbit hole to go down. And at the end of the day, it's a bike that's probably worth more in parts than it is to rebuild it. The Eliminator 250 was made for a short period of time. They just got scrapped, nicked, fucked up basically, and hence why I've got one sat outside that's in bits. They are worth more in parts, genuinely. Although it would be a very quick ending and a very sort of unrewarding ending for the project, I am leaning more towards parting out the bike rather than doing it up. If my dad can bring some new information to the table, and that might change my mind. So I guess we'll see what he says.